Hello, I am Suzie Robinson. I'm a consultant with Clearbox and I manage the insight reports that we publish. We also work with clients of all different shapes and sizes on topics like digital workplace strategy, publisher community training, communication channel assessments, and helping businesses choose new software, of course. We are vendor neutral. We have no formalized partnerships or reseller agreements in place, which means we can give honest advice to clients and can approach our product reviews from a neutral perspective as well. And we released our latest review report at the end of January, and the research for that is what has formed the source of today's webinar. So if you've not downloaded our report yet, give the QR code on the screen now a scan or type in the URL that's at the bottom there and click on the download button. If you fill in the short form, you'll have the link in your inbox by the time that this webinar is over, although do check your junk folder just in case, because it does like to disappear off in there. And inside, you'll find reviews of 34 products. 20 of them are in-depth assessments against business scenarios, which we formed following in-depth demonstrations with the vendors. And it's 862 pages and it's entirely free, so you might as well download it if you haven't done so already. And inside the report, you'll find information like this. So these are the scores for all 20 of the products that we've assessed in depth. So give that QR code a scan and download it now, and you won't have to worry about taking a screenshot of this page. You'll be able to actually see it in the final PDF of the report. Okay, so on to today then, where I'll spend most of my time talking about 5 industry trends that emerged from the research that we conducted. And then I'll pick out a few other innovative features from what we've seen across the different products as well. And there'll be plenty of time for a Q&A at the end. We're due to last for about 45 minutes, but if there are lots of questions, then we're happy to overrun by a little bit as well, of course. Right, on to the 5 industry trend areas then. And the first and inevitable trend, of course, is AI, which has gained a huge amount of traction over the past year. We haven't included a dedicated scenario about AI, though. We believe that AI features offer a way to address and meet our scenarios rather than being a scenario in its own right. There is a section dedicated to AI at the start of the report in the introduction, but I'll give you a bit of a taster of some of the areas that we found during this most recent batch of research. So first of all, over half of the products that we reviewed this year had generative AI features, and that's pretty remarkable when you think that there was nothing in the report this time last year, or very, very little in terms of generative AI. And the way that products approach generative AI features really does vary from each one, and they offer some or all of things like a natural language prompt where publishers instruct the AI to create a page of text, settings for tone, length, formality that are applied as part of generation, or a guide for the AI to edit after someone has written it themselves. And generated summaries of written text is another approach that these different tools take. And some vendors like Unily, which you can see on the screen here, have a form type approach to content generation. This is where publishers choose a variety of settings that augment the prompt, and that is then used to generate the content by the AI. Other vendors like Halo have a more fluid approach, where publishers can generate content, then gradually edit different aspects of it as they want to, so really hone down on what it is they need. Where publishers want to use AI to generate content, there are some tools like Unily that not only ring-fence organizations' data, but also apply an internal audience filter, which ensures that generated content is more audience appropriate for the first time. So generally, across the products that we've reviewed, we've seen security conscious features, but we do feel that that kind of ring fencing approach needs to be introduced across more of the tools that we've seen to make content more closely tailored to organizational needs and also appropriate to the audiences that it's presenting to. A few of the features that we were shown particularly stood out as being innovative in an already pretty innovative space. And the first example is from Oak Engage, which has an inbuilt policy template that is applied when a publisher wishes to create a new policy page. The AI then completes the template, generating a draft policy for review and for editing by the publisher, which is a helpful approach. Although the template might feel a little bit restrictive and maybe overly comprehensive for some, it does offer a really good starting point and maybe a solution for those people who don't have formal policy writers in-house. Powell and Sociable on screen here are the first two products that we've seen to introduce configuration options for admins, which provides context to the AI to refer to. So Sociable has sophisticated settings for organizations and individuals where they write context statements that any generated content is then passed through. And then the tone that's typically defined by vendors as part of the AI build is then also configurable in these tools within Sociable in particular. So admins can define exactly what warm or humorous means within their organization rather than maybe general meanings for those terms. Another innovative feature is Mango App's AI audio generation tool, which renders an audio version of a page without the need for publishers to record anything. This is a really great accessibility feature, and is also a kind of pseudo podcast feature as well, which allows people to keep up to date with news without having to read something. It'll allow them to listen while they're maybe doing something else. And there's no need for publishers to spend time recording and editing and compiling something. The tool does it all for them. Very few products have introduced AI into the search experience, which is a surprise given how often search appears high on the list of improvements that employees wish to see. So granted, issues with search aren't always associated with the technology itself, but there is a lot of potential for AI to make real improvements here. And one of the features that we like is the likely answers approach, which are generated by an AI. Halo is shown here, but we've also seen it in Ahead, Atlas, Mango Apps, Microsoft via Copilot, of course, Engage from Source, and WorkGrid. And this replicates a kind of Google-like experience where the search presents the answer to a question rather than merely a list of results of pages where then the individual would have to go and continue their hunt for the information on that particular page. We would like to see aspects of this likely answers approach become more common though. So things like teaching the AI when it has provided in an accurate answer, or providing obvious links to sources as well, so people can then follow up if they do want to see more, or maybe verify the information that they're seeing. And to aid information finding in a different way, some products have AI generated answers like Intranet that you can see here. These take the content of a page and summarize the information in a question and answer format that publishers can then edit. And this approach provides a bite-sized way for people to consume the information and allows for a pleasant browsing experience to find what they're looking for. As a slight variation of this, Copilot in Viva Engage will present readers may ask prompts to help publishers cover all relevant information in their initial post. And we think there's a lot of potential to dramatically improve employee experiences of products if AI is effectively applied to search. And debate has raged for years as to whether intranets and associated tools can be front doors into organizations' digital workplaces. If AI-driven search is developed, then these products are in a very good position to offer that way in, potentially more so than other digital workplace tools. And that's all on AI for now. Please do have a look in the report introduction if you'd like to read a little bit more insights, and look at the individual reviews as well to see where there are different features across the different tools. I'm going to move on to the next trend area now. And we've seen an evolution of these platforms over the past couple of years, where many vendors have focused on internal communications teams as core product owners or stakeholders. While internal comms has been important for a long time, we've seen a shift in the functionality on offer, so that these platforms are addressing internal comms needs and challenges head on. Given the importance of these platforms in organisations, we think this is sensible and have developed this scenario with comms teams in mind. And we know internal communicators will often rely on these platforms to reach their audiences. So we wanted to see what tools were available to help them create and manage the flow of news to appropriate audiences. This included different news types, so crisis communications, for example, and also ways of reaching people beyond the given platform. And we specifically explored these 4 areas during the product demonstrations, and I'll talk through all of these 4 in a little bit more detail now and give you some examples. So every product has some form of news creation process. Some of them, like First Up, include sophisticated page creation capabilities, while other tools take a simpler approach. As I've already mentioned, this is one area where we've seen different approaches using generative AI as well. And in our reviews, we've highlighted the different page building experiences between the different products. But ultimately, the appropriate level of sophistication is something internal communicators will need to decide for their audience and also for their publishing community. Something particularly sophisticated may not be relevant for absolutely every internal comms team. Similarly, audience targeting requirements may vary between internal communicators and also across different organisations. The bare minimum is integrations with Entra ID, which used to be Active Directory, so thanks very much Microsoft for another name change there, but also integrations with HR systems as well. Capabilities around creating audiences on the fly using profile fields may also be wanted though, so it's also something that we need to bear in mind during this process. And first up does audience targeting well, as you can see on screen here, but what's not shown in this screenshot is the fatigue rating to help publishers understand how much content has been directed at the audience members, which is available on a different screen within First Up, and we think is a really helpful feature to show how much is actually being sent out to these different groups. And the audience targeting features in First Up are part of a tool called Orchestration Engine, which will automatically surface content to individual employees based on their reading habits, how much has been targeted to them, and also the priority level of the communication piece itself. The flow of news is therefore almost entirely managed through automation and AI, but communicators may also want to see and influence that flow as well. And manual news flow management is another area that we've explored in this scenario, such as through calendars or Kanban boards or something similar to those. And you can see Workvivo and AppSpace on screen here, which are examples of these two different approaches done particularly well. Although this is an area that's still hit and miss, there's a lot of products that rely on simple publication dates rather than anything more sophisticated like these calendars or Kanban boards, which we think is a real shame. We think internal comms will increasingly want news management features as additional channels are added and hope to see this area expand across products. Which kind of links to the next point as well, because if you're trying to plan what's going out, you not only want to see what's going on through your intranet through this particular platform, but also through multi-channel as well. So internal comms folk will likely have to manage multiple comms channels, not just the intranet. And having a tool that will allow them to create once and then share in many places is incredibly valuable. And we expect to see a good range of additional channels when we look at this scenario with the different vendors. But it's not unusual for platforms that only work with maybe one or two, or in some cases not at all, and just relying on the intranet itself as the only communications channel. When we explored this scenario with the demonstration with the vendors, we looked for newsletter tools like this one in Halo, employee advocacy features like in Powell here as well, digital signage facilitation, the ability to share into other business systems like Teams, Slack, or even into Salesforce. And there are some other unusual channels and approaches as well, like Workvivo that has great live streaming features and Lumaps that include strong native video management features. There are all sorts of different channels out there, and we've seen a lot of different approaches. So have a look at the scenario to see what different approaches are covered by these tools. Essentially, though, we wanted to see a range of media and channel management, ideally where content was created just once and yet used in a variety of places and tailored to the different audiences that are found in those places. The next area then, so we've seen improvements in analytics over the past year or so, but this remains the area that would benefit most from improvements across the industry. And this is an area that I've been on my soapbox about for many years now, and historically has been one of the lowest scoring scenarios, if not the lowest scoring scenario in our entire report. And often vendors argue that clients want different things from analytics, so they give little data as standard. But we do think that there are basics that could be improved across the board that clients could then expand upon. Some vendors also argue that having loads of charts, loads of reports, lots of data means that they address this scenario fully. We actually disagree. We think that some data is basic and arguably not particularly useful, even though it's easy for vendors to surface for people to have a look at. Intranet managers really need actionable insights. That is data that helps them make decisions rather than just showing them irrelevant numbers. Very few vendors are hitting the mark with data around search in particular as well. Given the introduction of the AI features in search that I've already mentioned, and the prevalence of poor search experiences among employees, this area in particular needs a lot greater focus. With the addition of more internal comms tools, we'd expect to see more supporting analytics in this area as well. And a handful of vendors are doing this well, though, such as Staffbase, that has a really good analytics suite that would be made even better by the addition of search data. But we like how easy it is to drill down into the data that's presented and the variety of ways the useful information is presented in the different types of charts there. And first up again is a market leader in this area as well, with data presented in different and helpful formats on general site usage, content performance, search, community activities, and more. And first up is planning to expand their already strong analytics, such as through the introduction of an employee retention report that forecasts the risk of employee attrition, which is really unusual, but actually quite innovative. I'll get off of my soapbox now because I've talked about analytics before. To move on to this, so we've been impressed by the engagement and people-focused features that vendors have introduced in the past year. While social tools aren't anything new, there are some great capabilities and individual tools that support the development and maintenance of employee engagement. There is a mixed picture again, however, in the industry when it comes to some of these features. Some vendors claim to have dedicated tools, but in fact they merely offer content containers. So for example, they provide content containers for onboarding new employees, where they just provide a way for you to share documents and group information together. But tools to progress people through these early days, through things like to-do lists, workflows associated with activities, that sort of thing, is quite unusual. There are some really excellent examples where this has been done well, however. Engage from its ESG is built around the employee lifecycle, so a pre-boarding employee could see very different content, navigation, integrated tools, and even dedicated branding when compared to someone who's worked for the organisation for a decade. Similarly, Unily and others like Staffbase and Oak Engage include a journeys feature. This is where different communications and activities are set up in the form of a timeline that trigger when an employee reaches a particular stage. This works well for onboarding, for example, when a message from the CEO is presented to a new starter on their first day, but also can be used for something like if someone has said that they are due to go on parental leave, a countdown timer leading up to that date could then trigger certain activities or certain pieces of information in the lead up to them then leaving to go on that parental leave. Peer-to-peer recognition is becoming a lot more common now and gives employees simple screens to nominate colleagues for outstanding service or going above and beyond, that sort of thing. And there's a nice example from Oak Engage here, which works well on mobile. But WorkVivo and Ahead then tie praise into company values to tackle two engagement areas at once. They also allow employees to create their own posts that are then tagged with defined company values, so that values become a real living thing rather than just a static reference page in a shadowy corner of the intranet that people may not go to and may not be touched for a number of years until there's another refresh and another rebrand and then it gets pushed again. There are other great engagement features as well that I wanted to highlight. So this includes things like badges and gamification, such as in Sociable on screen here, micro-learning for bite-sized training, such as in Engage, events and live stream that I've already mentioned, like in WorkVivo, but also multiple reaction types to mirror social media platforms like in Blink, as well as dedicated wellbeing tools, company awards support, community tools, and a variety of other capabilities that we've explored in the reviews. Overall, though, this is a strong area for many platforms and really helps bring an element of fun to a digital workplace tool. The products that we've reviewed have started to fall into four categories, which I'll talk about in a moment. Some then are reliant on SharePoint, Google, or something else in the background in order to run, or are independent and operate without other software in the background. Understanding these categories, these four categories I'm going to talk about now, and what approach is right for your organisation will help you choose the right solution. There is no best overall approach or overall best platform, but there is what's best for you and for your organisation. So the first area is a modern intranets that deliver on those classic requirements. And I must stress, this doesn't mean old-fashioned, but instead are those features that organizations still look for when choosing a new platform. In essence, it'll be something that looks a bit like a reference website, but for internal use. And these platforms tend to be configurable, allowing organizations to make them as comprehensive or even as simple as wanted. Tools around search, content storage and navigation are usually pretty sophisticated to help people find what they're looking for in a large, quite comprehensive platform. And the vendors of these products typically address all 8 of our scenarios, although with mixed results. As an example, our 8th scenario addresses mobile and frontline needs, and these group of products tend to lift and shift their entire desktop experience into a small screen environment, and some are more successful at doing that than other products are. And an example of a classic intranet on screen here is from Omnia. The growing popularity of social media websites and the introduction of Yammer, which is now Viva Engage, but introduced over a decade ago now, has meant that social features and approaches are viewed as highly important by some organizations. In some cases, this means just having good features within the platform, while for some organizations, this means the whole site should be like an internally facing social network. In these cases, the homepage is often dominated by a feed of top-down communications and user-generated content as well, with varying amount of space given to practical tools or other relevant content such as communications. The need for in-depth navigation styles such as mega menus is therefore less important or takes a less traditional approach. Often there is a parity of experience across device types because products take an overall simpler approach to features. For example, navigation doesn't need to be as multiple layered as it does in a traditional intranet product. So that works well on desktop and then moving over to a mobile experience. An example of a social site would be WorkVivo. Some platforms choose to focus specifically on the needs of communicators, taking the approach of effectively reaching employees with news. There are similarities between social sites and comms platforms, so they could be grouped under the same header. The main differences, though, are that content can either be top-down or user-generated, plus the homepage tends to have multiple news feeds rather than a single activity feed on desktop. Although on mobile, this might be presented as a single feed still, or there may be multiple tabs or multiple filters to then reflect those different news feeds, those different kind of channels of communications that are being shared across the platform. And an example of a comms platform would be First Up. And this year, we've introduced mobile-first products into the range of platforms that we've reviewed, and many of them are employee mobile apps that enable frontline workers to do what they really need to from one place. These products are very simple on desktop, but this translates really well into an excellent mobile experience, as this is the focus for the vendor and the focus for the product. These vendors also typically understand frontline and other mobile audiences very, very well, so the all-round experience is positive. These products are often feature-rich, addressing specific business needs through the mobile interface. So, for example, Blink provides a method for communications, but also practical features like reporting an incident or viewing a payslip. They are really valuable for frontline workers and work incredibly well on a small screen environment. And I've already mentioned them, but an example of a mobile-first product would be Blink. So those were the 5 trend areas that I've just talked through, but there are a handful of products that we've assessed against our framework that I've not really mentioned yet. And I wanted to share some of the really good stuff that they're doing, some of those innovative capabilities that we've seen amongst those products. So we particularly like Fresh's ability to search for information at web part level. Finding news, documents or people can be a challenge, but web parts offer a defined scope of content to search. And while some users may still default to using the main SharePoint search, this feels like a strong benefit of the intranet, so people can easily find the information that they need within a contained space. And people search and user profile management are areas of strength and the focus of the Live Tiles directory as well. Individual profiles show a complete list rating with a link to add further content to their profiles where it's needed. Clicking on the link will then open a dialog box where the missing fields are presented to the employee and where inline help explains why data needs to be added or updated so that they are easier for their colleagues to find. And we really like the configurable bot technology behind the scenes, which helps with keeping profiles up to date and sends email notifications to users that reminds them to complete their profile or to regularly review it. Atlas then includes a feature called Hover Point, which adds navigation onto images, which supports interactive diagrams and process flows, for example. The Hoverpoint web part allows images to be marked up with clickable areas, and it can be used as an overlay on maps, on plans, process diagrams, or just to create a more visual in-page navigation. It's a versatile feature that's particularly useful in illustrating visual problems, such as by providing an interactive overlay to process flows or how-to instructions for a physical product that's maybe just being released for the first time. Video-based content is well supported by Lumap's Play, which I've shown on screen here, and it provides a secure corporate alternative to YouTube or Vimeo. The video gallery provides thumbnail previews of videos in the platform, along with title, duration, and number of views. The video gallery can be configured to show in the main menu of Lumap's mobile app as well, which is really handy. And videos can be embedded in published content or shared via a community post. And when viewed on mobile, an overlay feature means people can complete other tasks in the background while the video is still playing. So it can be used as almost like a podcast as well. And we really like Involve's glossary feature, and not just because they used Pikachu in their example. This is an easily maintained centralized list of key terms that can be associated with a link or with a description. So then when the term is shown in a page, it is automatically highlighted and the term explained when someone hovers over it. And in the image, the terms HR and Pikachu are in the glossary, so they are automatically underlined and explained when they're hovered over. And then, slightly different from Pikachu, integration with third-party systems is a real area of strength for Ecumena. A wide range of integrations are available out of box, with different ways to present them to users, which we think is really helpful. And the first approach is through a mission control, which can be accessed via a small persistent rocket icon that opens a personalized dashboard with a launchpad of icons to popular search systems or tools. So you can access things like Workday or ServiceNow from within that launchpad. A second approach sees business systems integrated via widgets, providing a more in-depth experience where users interact with the source system via the Ecumena interface. And what's really clever about this is if someone interacts with one of the widgets, the other widgets will then update depending on what's been selected. And that example is what you can see on the screen now. And a third integration approach is via an intelligent activity stream, which gathers content, actions, and notifications from across integrated sources that are then presented in a stream of cards for people to look at, and also in integrated notifications as well. Finally, I just wanted to highlight our 7 choices. I have said already that there isn't a single best product, but we do know that it's helpful to give a little bit of steer for people when they are looking at such a large number of products on the market. And these 7 are those products that we think are likely to appear on shortlist, either because of the range of things that they offer, or the quality of the range of features, or maybe even just something that they do particularly well means that they could end up on someone's shortlist. And you can read why we've chosen them and more about all of their features right there in the report if you download it.